Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Data Unchained. I'm your host, Molly Presley. We're streaming live from the NAB trade show today, so if you look at a different background, a little bit of background noise, we're at a convention in Las Vegas in the media and entertainment space. If you're new to the podcast, let me tell you a little bit about what we talk about on Data Unchained. Data has become a very decentralized resource, and what I mean by that is over the years of cloud computing, moving back all the way through to the mainframe space, data has been generated in different data centers, different storage systems. Now we're talking about edge computing, AI models where GPUs are in the cloud, and data is decentralized everywhere. We delve into both the problems as well as the solutions in using this decentralized data as a resource to grow your business on Data Unchained. Today's guest, not host, you want to be the host today?
Thank you.
Today's guest is Dave Thomson. Dave is the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at QStar Technologies. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Molly.
So, Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe. How did you kind of evolve into the space where you're doing a podcast at NAB?
So I've been in archiving now, which is still where I am, for about 30 years.
Okay.
I'm working for QStar now, and I have done for 15 years. Before that, I worked for a company called Plasmon that was doing optical archiving solutions, libraries, drives, media, software. And I was with them for 14 years. So pretty static, pretty archived myself.
Archive person. You're an archive yourself. So QStar, we'll talk more about it through the show, but maybe a few highlights about the company QStar.
Yeah. So we're a worldwide company. We've been around for 37 years. So again, another long-term solution provider. We have offices here in the US based in Colorado, and we have a second office in Milan, Italy for the European market as well.
Okay.
We do support services out of both offices, and we sell really to a whole variety of different markets. M&E is one of them, and that's why we're here to help Hammerspace and also obviously promote our own solutions into the M&E space. But it's not vertically specific at all. It is archive works in all markets, and we've been working in all markets for 37 years.
Okay.
Predominantly...
And your founder is right behind you, right? Hey, Riccardo, you should come for a minute. Unexpected guest, our founder from Italy is Riccardo Pinotti.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, so we have QStar is actually a partner in the Hammerspace booth this week. Great.
You.
So, Dave, we've known each other for actually quite some time.
Yes.
We founded organization and alliance called the Active Archive Alliance together 15 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. I remember talking to you. One of the first visits I did when I came over was to visit you in Colorado, and we were talking at length about how we could promote archive solutions and the misunderstanding within the market as to what archive really was. Back then, everyone seemed to associate it with backup.
Right.
And of course, what we wanted to be able to do was break that association and make sure that people understood you could use tape directly as a storage device and not have to rely on your backup engine to get you archived content.
Yeah, so the idea of making data much more actively accessible.
Correct.
You don't have to call IT, do a restore through Veritas, NetBackup, or something like that, but you can actually just work with the file sitting on tape. And that was kind of a novel concept at the time. People didn't think about their workflows that way.
No. Again, we'd been doing it for a while, but the whole idea was sort of lost because most people just assumed it was an extension of a backup product.
Right.
So, creating a file system, we actually called it Tape as NAS. And the whole idea was to make it look like a NAS RAID device. Obviously, it's using tape at the back end, so the performance is not going to be the same. But it's really designed for easy access. Users who have access, been granted access, will be able to access their data directly from their tape library, as long as they realize it's tape, and therefore they expect delays in the retrieval time.
So your applications mount, read it over a standard NFS or SMB kind of file system interface.
Correct.
And the data streams off of tape, or maybe there's some caching or something in the middle to help with that.
Exactly.
So I think a lot of organizations use tape today. It's still deployed in backup, in archive, in, some of the very large cloud providers are using it to deliver their cost-effective storage services. Tell us a little bit about where you see the role of tape, evolving over the last decade or so.
Yeah, so if you actually look at the new wave backup solutions, they don't use a lot of tape. And I think tape is sort of losing more out of that market than perhaps they predicted 5 or 10 years ago. But archive is taking its place very quickly.
And tape's not really optimized for backup, right? Like little files, random seeks, that's not what it's designed for, right?
We're trying to do the same thing. You can, in an archive environment, bring a single file back, but also we want to be able to put it down in the way that you're storing projects, which is more often the way you retrieve it. You've stored something out of your primary environment, you want to keep it. You very rarely bring a single file back that actually makes any use.
Right.
So you're bringing a set of files back, and we have to do that in the most optimal way.
So there's a lot of media choices out there. There seems like there's always new types of SSDs and form factors and capacities of HDDs and things like this. Why tape? Why do people use it?
So it's still the cheapest. Everyone tries to cut it down. People inflate the number of people you need to manage a tape library ridiculously sometimes. The whole idea of our software product and other people's software in this market, in the active archive world, is to reduce the overhead of management of the tape library. So we want to be able to automate a lot of the processes. So we're doing internal media copy. It doesn't have to necessarily schedule that. We can just create it on the fly. The biggest operation is still obviously media removal and addition. So the key thing is that air-gapped copy. Everyone today, particularly with ransomware, is looking for that air-gapped copy, and tape naturally gives it to you. You don't want to keep all of your media on site. Iron Mountain makes a very good living, thank you, out of maintaining people's off-site stores.
Okay.
And so that's what we want to be able to provide people, is that very, very low-cost option of getting that air-gapped copy within their environment.
Low cost and power efficient, right?
Which
there's a lot of issues with. The GPUs are taking all the power in the data center, and there's no power left, right? And tape's a great solution in that area as well.
That's right. So there's no spinning environments. You're just moving the media around. The tape drives will only use power really when they're actually active. But there's an awful lot of capacity that is sitting there isolated from a drive until you actually need it.
Okay. I was talking to Equinix at a conference in New York last week, and they were saying that they have, their data centers designed that there's a certain amount of power per square foot.
Sure.
And if they put a big compute cluster in, it consumes most of it, and there's all this empty space. What do you do with it? Put a tape library in, and their idea is this is great. You can put a big tape library with a whole bunch of storage capacity in data center space that really only has a little bit of power left, and you can meet both your compute and your capacity needs, which I think is really clever. This is an interesting way the world is evolving.
And in those environments, we mentioned at the beginning SMB and NFS, but we also added S3 to our stack as well. So you can actually push content in through one and pull it out through a different protocol if you wanted to. S3 obviously is becoming more and more important over the last, say, 10 years. Right. When we were talking originally at the Active Archive Alliance, we were just doing file system approach, but S3 now is definitely more of a player out there.
And that makes sense that a lot of applications are designed to write to S3 now, so let the application owner decide how they want to interact with their storage, and you have that available,
Correct.
right?
And we're seeing applications change as well. So, 15 years ago, they only did file systems, and now they've got the S3 option. So with the QStar, if they've already put data in 15 years ago, they can potentially pull it out through a different protocol using the same applications potentially that created the data. So the whole idea is that when you're storing content, particularly for an archive, you've got to assume that data is not going to sit on that piece of media for any period of time, long period of time. You have to think about the migration of that content, which again we manage. So either that's moving it from LTO 4, say, to LTO 6 and then on to LTO 9, where we are obviously today, or moving it from some old optical technology to a newer tape system. We do all of those, and then it's all managed in background, so the user doesn't need to understand that they're even doing a migration.
So I think the two stories between Hammerspace, the company I work for, and QStar are really interesting. We're solving at different layers in the stack a lot of similar problems. That on the Hammerspace side, we want users and applications to be able to connect to a global file system and not have to worry what storage is out there. Maybe their data is sitting in NVMe, maybe it's in the cloud, maybe it's in some other data center, but once they connect to Hammerspace, they have visibility to all the data in the organization.
Yes.
But so long, even back to the Active Archive Alliance days, the data on tape was always kind of handled separately.
Yes.
That's all the data except for the tape data, and then that was like its own specialized thing. And us working together, we've made it where those users and applications that are connected into the global data environment through Hammerspace, and then the QStar archive technology can also see all of the data on tape. Maybe can you talk a little bit about how the two technologies connect together?
Yeah. So the key thing with what you're doing is to provide people choice. So you don't say you have to use this or you have to use that. Whatever they happen to have already and wherever they want to go in the future, you give them the flexibility to be able to do that. Adding tape gives you another low-cost option rather than just cloud. So what we're looking to try and do is be the product of choice whenever somebody decides to use Hammerspace and they need tape, then they hopefully come to QStar. We have the ability to make that data available. We also have some very good web services commands that we're hoping that Hammerspace will adopt to allow optimization of that content as well. We are creating and managing a variety of storage capacity points. So really our entry level is 50 terabytes, and we go all the way up into now the exabyte world. So we just launched our latest product called Global Archive Space that allows us to actually create archives out of multiple nodes. Previously, it was a single server environment, which obviously were limited in terms of the number of tape drives we could support through a single server. Today, we're now able to actually add up to 64 nodes in front of a very large tape library.
Wow.
And that gets us into hundreds of tape drives potentially and tens of thousands of pieces of media.
And so that matters in this world of massive computing. I mean, certainly HPC, some of the big post-production houses and NAB and M&E have been doing this for a while, but a lot of enterprise now is trying to get into the market of using AI, having a lot of compute capabilities. Yep. Maybe talk about, we talked about the efficiencies of tape, but maybe talk about the performance attributes and why tape drives and nodes matter.
So with LTO 9, we're at 400 megabytes a second native. And we always, at QStar anyway, talk about native capacity and native performance because most of the data that we receive is already compressed.
Okay.
So trying to compress it again doesn't get you anywhere. So I'd prefer to err on the conservative side, and if you happen to get compression, great. Then you get a bonus.
Okay.
So 400 megabytes a second per tape drive. So I would say when you're talking about 100 tape drives potentially, you've got a very, very fast option to get content in and out. The way that we're trying to manage the tape drives is also slightly different from the other manufacturers that are out there. A lot of them, to get the capacity and the performance up, are using what they call RAID, redundant array of tapes.
Okay.
We chose not to do that because you have to load all of those media together to be able to get any data back. And as you know, it's probably several minutes to load one piece of media, the same to again to load two, and so you're waiting potentially 10 minutes to get 5 pieces of media online. So the way we work is with an option called multi-drive. What we're doing is we're allowing through policies the ability to actually store content in a predefined way.
Okay.
So typically, and this is really for restore operations or retrievals. Again, project-based, if you have data in one subdirectory, we write it to one piece of media in OneDrive. In a subsequent subdirectory, we have that going to drive 2, and a third subdirectory will go to drive 3. So the idea being, if you wanted all of those 3 subdirectories back for a particular project that you're working on, we'll load the first piece of media in drive 1, and we'll start reading immediately from that drive. We don't need to get all of them working together.
So you'll start prefetching,
and then as soon as drive 2 is loaded with its content, we can start pulling data from that. So we just felt it was far more efficient. And tape is, people always say tape is slow, but tape is relatively slow for the first byte. After that, it's very fast.
So this seems really well fit for maybe you're a genomics institute and there's a collection of data you want. Certainly here at NAB is a film that maybe, a specific set of frames that folks need. That makes a lot of sense. How do you see that playing out as organizations are thinking about maybe loading data into Gen AI and things like that?
Yeah, so again, it's you've got to try and be available to be flexible, So that's again what we're looking to try and do. Most people need that content local, but through Hammerspace, you can also now distribute that content wherever you need it to be. We're all about trying to make sure that organizations get that performance where they need it, and time to data is obviously critical. For a lot of organizations, not for everybody. There's also, and we haven't talked about it probably because it's not so relevant to Hammerspace, but there's plenty of organizations that go in for deep archive content where they really don't touch content at all. But for the AI/ML sort of world, then we are seeing a significant change where, as I mentioned, data is shuttled in and shuttled out. Projects are being worked on, numbers crunched and so on. Information obtained from that data set, and then that data set needs to be parked, perhaps for 6 months, a year, and then maybe later on more data is added to it, and then they'll do it again. But you certainly don't want that data sitting stationary doing nothing on expensive disk while you want to be reusing that for new content, new discoveries.
So your new announcement came out, it was just this weekend, I believe.
Yeah.
And so it's really around the ways to bring more performance, more tape drives
and higher
into
capacity.
A recovery or restore operation.
Yeah, again, it's so a single server will max out, as I say, at 10 tape drives. And then to get higher performance, in the past, what we had to do is bolt multiple servers together. To work with tape, you then had to partition the tape library up for each server to have its own resources.
Sounds pretty manual and complicated.
Absolutely, yeah. and of course, you get it wrong. So this server is now, got a third of the resources, when in fact it needs half of them. So the global archive space product will eliminate all of that. We can and then of course, if you decide that you want more nodes, they're easy to add at a later stage, which then gives you more tape drive options and a higher capacity and more performance. So
scale your performance to meet your compute demands or whatever your performance side needs, and then working with Hammerspace, it sounds like there's some integration we could do where some of the metadata that we use could be tied into how you're organizing these projects to make the recovery even more optimized. But really taking a lot of the manual tasks of IT, trying to find the data, get it off of the backup to the server, to the primary production environment, that's pretty much eliminated in this kind of workflow.
And we can do a pseudo backup solution directly. So within Hammerspace, you can actually decide that one of your options is anything goes to tape.
Yeah.
You never know when you might need it there, and it is it's a protected copy. You don't need anything to do with ransomware. We can always recover everything that's got to tape. We are unaffected directly by ransomware, the way that we work.
Amazing.
Content can be rewritten, if you like, but we can ignore that rewritten content and go back to whatever we'd had previous to the ransomware attack.
Okay, so it sounds like as you're architecting for this next data cycle, as you're thinking about new data architectures, whether it's for AI, data analytics, and you really want to access all of your data, looking at this joint solution, looking at what QStar has recently announced, is really worth taking a look at as you're thinking about not just your data access, but your ransomware, your data protection strategies, and in the new way of architecting your data. So thank you, Dave, for joining. It was
Molly.
lovely having you on the show. If people want to learn more, is QStar.com the right place to go, or is there anything else you would point them to?
No, QStar.com is the best way. There's multiple ways of actually connecting with us through that website.
Okay.
And probably if you put my email address on this, then anybody can contact me directly as well.
Okay, we'll throw Dave's email address on. Check out QStar.com, and thank you for joining us, Dave.
Thank you, Molly.
Thanks for listening to Data Unchained, powered by Hammerspace. To learn more, visit hammerspace.com. If you have a guest you would like to hear on the show, email me at molly@hammerspace.com.